Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today we're going to talk about some game news that was dropped yesterday in a Q&A with the executive producer, Severlin, and also talk a little bit about Update 49. So Update 49 dropped yesterday, April 21st. It was released initially, and then there were some issues, so they had to quickly shut the servers down, and the servers actually remained down overnight until today, April 22nd, when they reopened them in the morning. I think it was around 10 a.m. Eastern, something like that. But in any case, it's out now, and it included a bow pass and some other related passes like work on lag and such, and it included a new adventure pack. So I've already done videos talking about all of I did 3 videos on the preview for Update 49, 3 different videos. So if you want to see more discussion on that, I'll link those videos below. As far as the adventure pack, I'm planning to do a review of that. So let's get started on Severlin's comments, and have to also give a disclaimer, as I usually do. These Q&A things, Severlin's been doing this they've been doing this a few times. I think it's been, what, 2 or 3 times now? So you have to keep in mind that this is just him kind of talking with the community manager, and most of this, pretty much all the stuff thrown out are a lot of things that he would like to do. None of this is really official announcements, so you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. So just keep that in mind. And I'll also link the video in the description below for the full context. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So at the 3-minute and 11-second mark, they talked about character storage, specifically inventory storage. And they've talked about this before. Severlin has addressed this before. And what they want to do is they want to change the character bank UI first before they can address that. There's really nothing that he talked about in terms of a commitment or anything really a promise, or even it's obviously there's a desire to add more inventory, but they have this continuous problem where it could possibly lead to lag issues. I mean, it's obvious they want to get items out of the game, and we've seen things like the sentient weapons system that was obviously intentionally designed in a way to get items out of the game. So I think they have a concern with storage issues, technical limitations, but they did sort of talk about it. But if it happens, they want to do a revamp on the UI first for the storage, like the bank UI. Okay, at the 5-minute 53-second mark, they talked about debuffs and CC builds. So this is kind of the big thing, and I talked about this in my prior videos on Update 49. This is something a lot of players are complaining about, is that in this update 49, there are lag changes that are basically reducing the number of attacks in the game for effects like double shot and double strike. So the result of this is a nerf by proxy to certain builds. So for example, any builds that are using bows for a CC, or really a lot of these bows will be nerfed by proxy just because there's less attacks in the game, so there's less chances to proc effects like paralyzing, for example, on a bow. So the developers, I mean, Severlin discussed this, and look, it's really the same situation as I talked about in the last video. They seem to be okay with this nerf by proxy. Not that they really seem to want to nerf it, it's just that they don't know. They're trying to reduce lag, and that seems to be a higher priority. And they seem to be okay with the power level of these builds, even after the nerf. So, and they don't want to, it appears they don't really know of a way to undo this nerf or to balance out, this nerf by proxy. And it's not a direct nerf, it's a nerf by proxy. They don't really know of a way to do that without adding more calculations into the game, which is what they're trying to do here, is reduce the number of calculations in the game to hopefully reduce lag, which is why they reduced the number of attacks in the game for things like double strike and double shot. Again, look at my previous videos where I talk about that more, but in any case, they're aware of it, but it kind of is what it is, guys. I think they're okay with the power level of these builds right now, and maybe they'll revisit it in the future, but for now, it is what it is. Fortunately, though, if you're a range user, even though if your CC effectiveness may go down, your DPS should go up, because they did a pass with this update where they did a lot of DPS increases for these types of these archetypes. So like there's been increases to the power of certain feats, for example, which I covered in my previous videos. So just look on the bright side. Even if it is a nerf in one area for your build, maybe your DPS is better now. Okay, move on to the 8-minute 41-second mark. They talked about the ED pass, which they have mentioned before. So the Epic Destiny pass, where they're going to revamp Epic Destinies to make them more like heroic trees. they did say that they are in the middle of it, and Severlin mentioned that they are something along the lines of they're going to get this out to the Players Council, or they are getting out to Players Council. So there are good ways on this. It sounds like a lot of the work's been done, so I would expect this to happen in the next update. They didn't say that specifically, but and this is speculation from me, but it sounds like the ED Pass will probably be in like, what, 2-3 months? Something like that. That's what I would expect. Again, they didn't commit to that, but that's what I'm expecting. What's going to happen is the Epic Destinies will be reworked to work more like heroic trees. So that's something to be expecting. Okay, let's move on to the 9-minute 40-second mark. They talked about customer service. And as we all know, as I know personally, customer service has not been that great in recent times. So a lot of tickets that you might put in while you're playing have been they'll just remain open forever, and there's been a big backlog of tickets. I've had a ticket that's been open for a long time. So what Severlin said is that they've made technical improvements, and that in the customer service, people can now look at tickets offline. So one of the problems they have with tickets is, or at least a policy they used to have, or technical limitation, I'm not totally sure what it is exactly, but they often required you to be online, logged into that character. But it sounds like they've made changes so now they can look more into tickets offline and hopefully do fixes while you are offline. So that should help. But they're aware of it, and they also put out a post, I think a tweet as well, kind of addressing this weeks ago, where they're aware of it and they're working on it. So yeah, I mean, the customer service situation has not been good. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Hopefully it improves. Okay, at the 13-minute 25-second mark, they talked a little bit about challenges and why someone asked why there weren't more challenges, or why we aren't seeing more challenges. And Severlin said that it's a balancing issue, and that the current challenge system doesn't scale difficulty right over a wide number of levels. So what it sounds like is the current tech won't scale. So in other words, the way that it works right now is they can't really set the difficulty to an appropriate level for people. So they've kind of shied away from doing challenges. Personally, I'm okay with that. I've never been the biggest fan of challenges. There definitely hasn't been one in a while. So I wouldn't expect, based on what he's saying, a little bit of speculation here, but I wouldn't expect more challenges anywhere anytime soon. At the 17-minute 25-second mark, they talked about the hardcore champions. So if you don't know, they are on the hardcore server. They're experimenting more with monster champions, and they've released different varieties of champions, and they've changed over, I believe they've changed over each hardcore season. They've been a little different, if I'm recalling correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But someone asked if they are going to move those hardcore champions over to the regular servers. Severlin said if they do it, it would only be as a temporary event. And the reason for that is they want to make sure that the player base is totally on board with them and find them fun. They don't want to introduce champions into the game that would radically alter, players' experiences, or anything that would make the game significantly more frustrating, because moving new champions over to the regular servers would be a big deal, because it would change every single quest in the game, if you're running an appropriate difficulty. So you have to keep that in mind. It could really change some players' experiences, so they don't want to introduce champions that are overly annoying or frustrating for players. So in any case, it sounds like there could be a temporary promotion, or temporary, I guess a temporary event or something. No, he didn't mention specifically an event, but if it happens, it'll be temporarily. But it sounds like they're not planning to radically radically change the champions or bring them over anytime soon. Okay, at the 22-minute 19-second mark, they talked about UI scaling. So they've talked about this before in the past. So the UI, so that refers to the hotbars and the menus, all that stuff in game. So the problem with that is the UI right now doesn't scale. So you can't make it bigger or smaller, for example. It's just a fixed image. They want to change the UI to make it scalable. But the problem with that is in order to do that, they would have to redo every single icon in the game, like the artwork on every single icon, because right now they're fixed images at a set size. So they'd have to redo all the artwork, and that's just a huge project. So they don't really have any updates to that, because they've mentioned this in the past as well. But they did say it's something they want to do. It's just they don't know when. At the 23-minute 19-second mark, they talk about new hairstyles for characters. Severlin said they're probably coming early next year, maybe late this year. So that's cool if you like different hairstyles on your characters. He didn't mention whether that's going to be free or a store-bought hairstyle, but new hairstyles is something he did mention. Okay, the 23-minute 45-second mark, he briefly mentioned the Isle of Dread, said there's no updates, but they still want to do it. So if you guys don't know, Isle of Dread has been teased really since 2018 Gen Con. They want to do it. They haven't made any. It sounds like they're committed to doing it eventually because they keep talking about it, but it's not going to happen this year. Who knows if it happens next year? But I personally, this is speculation, but as I've said in a prior video, I wouldn't be surprised to see Isle of Dread be the next expansion, like next main expansion. I know Saltmarsh this year is a quote-unquote mini expansion, but I think the next full-blown expansion, good chance it's going to be Isle of Dread, because they just keep talking about it. And they keep mentioning that the artists want to do dinosaurs. They've already worked on dinosaur assets in the game. So for example, you know, there are dinosaurs in Sharn, for example. So they have, apparently, you know, from looking at dinosaurs being in other areas of the game already, it seems like they've started on it at some point. So I think it definitely will happen. It's just when. You know, it could be 2022, it could be 2023. We don't know, but it's something that I feel pretty safe saying will happen. 24-minute 15-second mark, they talked a little bit about Saltmarsh. So Saltmarsh, as you all might remember, is going to be the next main, you know, big thing this year. We don't know when it's coming. It sounds like it's going to come either fall or late 2020. Based on what they're saying, I'm thinking probably more like December. But he briefly just mentioned that it sounds like it's going to be the next thing after update 49. And Severlin did mention that the artists are currently working on, and I quote, a certain giant-sized creatures. So that might be a teaser. I'm not familiar with the Saltmarsh classic kind of pen and paper module, because it is based on a pen and paper module. This is a classic module as well as a quote-unquote mini expansion. But if you're familiar with it, maybe you can tell me in the comments below what certain giant-sized creatures exist in that module that we might see. Okay, next, at the 25-minute 30-second mark, he talked about mounts. So someone asked if they're going to do a non-horse mount. Severlin was very confident here in saying that they definitely are going to do that. So it sounds, I know not much in this video can really be seen as a commitment, but it sounds like from what he's saying, they're definitely going to do that. And it's not a surprise. Like, mounts are popular, people like them. It makes all the sense in the world that they're going to continue to make new mounts, and they're going to branch off from just doing variants of horses at some point. So Severlin threw out a couple of examples, some which he'd mentioned before. So he once again brought up flying carpets, which, if you remember from my previous videos or from his previous Q&As, he had mentioned before that he would like to do flying carpets. Not a commitment, but it sounds like it's something he wants to do. He also mentioned something that I thought was really funny. He mentioned a gelatinous cube mount that he would like to do, and he started to describe it. And basically, the way he's imagining it working is that your character would be in the middle of the cube, like paralyzed inside the cube, and the cube would walk through, you know, through DDO's landscape. So I think that would be really funny. I think that would be really popular too. It sounds like a pretty good idea. So that would be really cool if that happens. So those some of the examples that he threw out, but in any case, I'm sure we'll see more mounts in the future. It makes all the sense in the world. Okay, at the 26-minute 42-second mark, they talked about they talked about some pricing with the Saltmarsh expansion. So, and I'm going to speculate a little bit here, but the way Severlin talked here is he mentioned that, and again, this is a little bit of speculation on my part, but it sounded like he's saying that they want to make Saltmarsh cost less for VIPs. So it sounds to me like the goal here and the plan is when Saltmarsh comes out, the way they want to kind of reward VIPs for being VIPs, because as you all might know, VIPs do not get expansion content for free, and this mini expansion is going to fall under that same rubric, in that VIPs are going to have to pay for it also. But one of the things they want to do to kind of reward VIPs or kind of comfort the blow a little bit of VIPs having to pay for this in addition to their subscription is they're going to give them a discount. So sounds like that's the plan. Now, Severlin was very clear that there's no promises on this, and it's dependent on if the tech can work out on this. So it depends on if they technically can do that, because with the sales store and, you know, the technical issues behind the scene, they don't know if they can do it yet. But it sounds to me, and this is speculation from my part, it sounds to me from what he's saying that the plan is to give VIPs a discount on Saltmarsh. Okay, that's what I'm expecting. That's what it sounds like. most probable. But again, I have to be very clear, that is speculation from me. It's not promised that that's going to happen, but it sounds like that's their goal. So you can go to the clip yourself, the 26-minute, 42-second mark, make your own judgment, but that's what I'm getting from what he's saying. Okay, moving on to the 27-minute, 20-second mark, they talked about cosmetic storage. Severlin said if it happens, it will probably be a bank rather than a bag, because cosmetics have a complicating code issues with that. So for those of you who are wondering about the cosmetic storage, and they've explained this before, one of the reasons why they can't make a cosmetics bag like they have with so like collectibles or your ingredients bags, the reason they can't do a cosmetic bag is because of the coding. So the way that the cosmetics work, I think all the cosmetic, I think definitely the glamored cosmetics, I'm not sure if it's all cosmetics, but a substantial portion of the cosmetics in the game, the back end of that, the code is tied to the actual items. So they can't put them in bags. There's a technical issue that they can't do that because of the code. So they're very aware. Like, people ask a lot about cosmetic storage, and they definitely want to do it. I think it would be a hit in the store. It's something people would be very willing to pay for. And I know it would have a lot of benefits, because if there's storage, all of a sudden people are going to be more willing to buy cosmetics. I know personally I enjoy cosmetics, but I don't buy them, and I don't even care about them because there's no place to put them. Like, inventory is so limited. So if there is a cosmetic storage area on your character, it's definitely going to, I would say it's safe to say that it's going to increase the sales of cosmetics just by proxy, just as a side effect, without even adding more new cosmetics. So that's cool. So hopefully that happens. They didn't give like a promise or anything like that, but they just said if it happens, it's going to be a bank rather than a bag. Let's move on to the 31-second, 48-minute mark in the video, where Severlin talked about Horizon Walker. So Horizon Walker is a new universal enhancement tree that's going to come, sounds like definitely, yeah, it's going to come later this year. It's going to be a bow-focused universal enhancement tree. So Severlin said they've wanted to do a bow enhancement tree so that bow users don't feel so locked into a specific class like a ranger, which is true. I mean, you can run bow users as you can be a fighter or a monk, for example, but they want to give more options to really to a higher variety of classes to use a bow. So that's one of the reasons why they're doing a bow focused universal enhancement tree. So it's something that's going to come later this year. They didn't give much other details of it. They didn't add much more to that, but it's certainly a interesting year to be a bow user. You know, they got the bow pass this with update 49, and then there's going to be a universal enhancement tree later. So there you go, something else to look forward to if you're a bow user. Okay, moving on to the 33-minute mark, they again mentioned that they want to do a leadership feature, which they've talked about before. So if you remember from my previous videos or from the previous Q&As, they want to do this leadership feature, which basically what this would do is it would be a way to be able to share past lives with your group members. So the idea here is to hopefully reduce the power gap and to make it easier for, say, newer players or players who haven't reincarnated so many times. Hopefully reduce that gap and make it easier for these players to play together. So the idea would be that while you're grouped with a certain player, other players in your group could benefit. You all could basically share past lives or benefit from each other's past lives. So if you've got one guy or gal in your group who's got 40 past lives, and you've got some first life characters in the group as well, some of those first life characters might be able to benefit or share. They haven't gone into detail how it's going to work or how they want it to work, but in some way they're going to be able to share or benefit from the past lives. So that's the idea. He went on to say that they probably won't look at this until after Saltmarsh, but it sounds like something that they want to do. So maybe they start work on that this year. Who knows? Moving on to the 36-minute, 41-second mark, Severlin mentioned that long-term, he wants a system where we can build our own hireling. So this is new. I don't think they've ever mentioned this before, but it's something that, again, like I said at the beginning of this video, this stuff isn't commitments. This is just Severlin throwing out ideas of things he wants to do for the most part. So this might not ever happen, but it sounds pretty cool. Although I wonder how that would work exactly. He didn't give much detail, but build your own hireling. Interesting. Okay, moving on to the 37-minute, 57-second mark. Severalin said that they need to do a pass on non-cosmetic pets and summons to make them more useful. So this is pretty obvious. I mean, summons and your non-cosmetic pets. So this means your artificer dog, for example, your pale master skeleton. These things, they're I've heard some people say that you can make them decent, but for the most part, they're not really all that viable. They're definitely not meta. So they would like to do some kind of pass on summons and these non-cosmetic pets to make them more useful. I don't know that they want to ever make them like, they got to be careful there. I don't know if they ever going to make them like equal to like a party member, but they certainly could stand to make them better. And it sounds like they want to do that. And they added on to this at the 38-second, 27-second mark. Severalin said he'd love to do a summoning based class as well. So that would be very interesting. So a class that's focused on summoning. Interesting. Okay, moving on to the 39-minute, 57-second mark. Severalin mentioned the possibility of a Hireling Pass. And I know this is something that is, surprises me that quite a bit of people are asking for. He also mentioned that hirelings are a balancing act because they don't want them to be as good as players, which I think makes sense. It is an MMO, and you do want to encourage people to group with each other. That's the goal. That's that's the design goal for people to play together. So I think it makes sense for hirelings to be a little stupid. So personally, I've always been okay with hirelings being, as stupid as they are, because look, my opinion, there should be an incentive there to actually group with people. You shouldn't be able to just replace, your party members entirely with hirelings. They shouldn't perform as good as players, but at the same time, they could also do some work to help balance them out a little bit, so they don't do really dumb things like just run into lava or whatever. So, or run into a trap. So I know that can be definitely a problem. And right now, someone went on to talk about how hirelings are kind of almost a skill or a mini game in and of themselves, because you've got to really focus on making sure they stand their ground at certain times, so they don't get themselves killed, or make sure they stay in one place, so that they don't take too much aggro, whatever. So he knows it's a balancing act, but it sounds like they want to at least address them somewhat. Didn't make any promises on how much smarter they're going to get, but it sounds like they want to at least improve them some. Okay, at the 43-minute, 15-second mark, they talked a little bit about low-level raids. So they said that low-level raids has not really been a focus for them because they aren't utilized much, and they'd rather spend that time elsewhere. So that makes sense. I mean, the developer's time is limited. Personally, I don't think it would be too much. Is it really that much work, to make a level, 15 version of a raid you're making for level 32 anyways? I don't know, but it does make sense that they definitely aren't run as much, just because it's hard to find 12 people in the same level range, and normally you just want XP as you're leveling up. Although some raids definitely, like Chronoscope, for example, seems to be run fairly frequently at lower levels, but whatever. I'm kind of okay with this. Raiding does tend to be an in-game thing, and probably should remain an in-game thing primarily, so it's whatever. Okay, next on to the 45-minute, 30-second mark, they talked about the Titan raid. So Severalin basically alluded to that if they ever revisited it, it would be easier to just redo it from scratch, because there would be a lot of work there in redoing it. So it sounds like from what he's saying that they aren't going to ever, that they don't have plans, at least right now, to say scale it up to level cap. But Severalin did mention that if they update it, they were to update it, they might update the loot. That's a possibility, but it sounds like they won't actually update they don't have any plans to bring that rate up to level cap. Okay, moving on to the 47-minute, 22-second mark, and this is where I think Severalin might have spilled a little bit of something for the Saltmarsh mini expansion. So they talked about the scroll seal shard system, and Severalin basically said that he thought that a scroll seal shard revamp was part of Saltmarsh. So it sounds like he let something slip there, and go to the 47-minute, 22-second mark. Around there, you can see it for yourself, but it sounds like he let something slip, in that they are actually working on a scroll seal shard revamp as part of the Saltmarsh mini expansion for this year. Not a promise, but from what I'm interpreting from that clip, and this is a little bit of speculation on my part, it sounds like they have either talked about, were planning, or at least strongly considered doing a scroll seal shard, because Severalin did say in that quote that he thought this revamp was going to be part of Saltmarsh. So who knows what that means? You can read into it as you like, but I'm gonna say from that, it sounds like they at least Severlin thought that it was already in progress for as part of the work of the Saltmarsh expansion. So maybe this year we'll see some kind of revamp of Scroll Seal Shard, maybe making that stuff easier to get. Maybe. No promises. Again, a lot of speculation on my part there, but you can go to the time code and come to your own conclusion. Okay, moving on to the 49-minute, 26-second mark. Severlin talked briefly about server merges, and this is where there was some bad news. Okay, so he said there are still technical issues preventing the server merger, and he also readdressed the idea of a mega server. So if you remember in previous Q&As, Severlin mentioned that a possible idea for a server merge in the future would be a mega server. So the idea there would be one large server. They could kind of merge everyone instead of merging 2 individual servers together, for example, or taking like 3 and 3 and merging them together, just make one mega server that they could merge everyone into. But or maybe 2. I don't remember if he mentioned 1 mega server 2. I think he mentioned just 1 when he talked about this previously. But in any case, he did mention that they have been theorizing this, and they ran into some technical limitations for a server merge when they were exploring this idea. So it sounds like that they hit a dead end when considering that as a possible solution to server merges. So that's kind of a bad, definitely not a good sign. But guys, I will continue to say what I've said in previous videos, is that I don't think we're ever going to get server merges in DDO. I think it's something that they do talk about, and I think it's probably good for the players to kind of quell the rage, because they don't want to ignore that completely, because they know it's something players want. So I think it's good that they're showing us that they're trying, at least trying and listening to us on that. But when I look at this from a practical standpoint, from what I know and from what I've read, I think that there's just too many technical limitations, and I wouldn't get your hopes up. Moving on to the 51-minute 48-second mark, Severlin briefly talked about gifting. So the idea here, and I'm not sure entirely what he was referring to when it comes to gifting, if he meant gifting like items, gear, or if what I think he meant was more like like DDO points and stuff like that. He mentioned that gifting is an idea they're considering, but that there's an issue with it in that it tempts people to hack your account. So if you make stuff easier to transfer from one account to another, it's more of an incentive for people to hack your account so they can steal your stuff. So that's a reason why they are cautious to do it. Moving on to the 56-minute 10-second mark, which is the last question here, or the last topic that I have. They talked briefly about a Revenant universal enhancement tree. So this is a tree that would basically be a universal undead tree. So kind of like a Hailmaster-esque tree, except it would be universal, so that any character in whatever class could splash in it and be undead. So that's something Severlin did reveal that they talked about as a possibility when they were developing Ravenloft, but it didn't happen. He mentioned that it didn't fall under the scope of the work, so apparently they didn't have enough time or resources to do it. But it sounds like it's something, from what he's told us, it's definitely something they've talked about before, so maybe that's something that could happen in the future. I think it's definitely a really cool idea. I mean, it would be awesome, really cool to be able to play as an undead form, even if you're not, not a wizard. So that would be really neat. But it's something they've talked about. So guys, that's going to be it for this video. Again, I will link below the full context of the entire Q&A video. I also did a stream of this video. I restreamed it and kind of gave my comments along the way, which I'll put my video below as well. But when it comes to the timestamps I revealed to you in this video, those link up and match up with the official Q&A video on YouTube. So guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.